Hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the past continuous in English. Now, this is also called the past progressive. And what you'll notice is that this is very similar to the present continuous in many ways, but of course there are important differences. When it comes to the formation, we use the past simple of to be, which will be our auxiliary verb, followed by the gerund. And we note that in order to form the gerund, we generally add the suffix ing to the end of the verb. But there are some verbs that are special in that they require spelling changes. We're not going to focus too much on that. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to leave a link to the present continuous lesson so that you guys can see or observe the various spelling changes. For example, if a verb ends in E, we remove the E and we add ing. So you can check that out because it will be in the description. No. So past simple of to be, which will tell us who performs the action as well as the time. And then we have the gerund, which is the continuous form of the verb, right? So this is how we form it. So let's look at some examples. We were playing the piano. I was studying for my exam. Paul and Susan were writing a story, right? So these are just examples to show you the examples of the formation, right? Of course, we have not focused on the context, right? So you will get a deeper understanding of this once we look at the context, right? So I just wrote these sentences because I wanted you to see examples of the formation. But now we are going to get a better understanding because we are going to look at the context in which the past continuous is utilized. So we move on to the context in which the past continuous is utilized. The first context is going to be to talk about an action that continued for a period of time. In the past, of course. For example, Max was playing the piano all day. Right. So all day represents the period of time, and was playing tells us that Max continued to play the piano during for the entire day. All day suggests, or all day tells us that this action continued, or this action was continuous. Therefore, we utilize the past continuous. They were crying all night. All night tells us that this action carried on for a period of time. What is that period of time? All night, right? And what was the action? Crying. So they were crying all night. So in this case, anytime you want to convey that an action was continuous or it continued for a period of time, we utilize the past continuous. So the key element is the action has to be continuous and it has to have carried, it has to be, it would have to have lasted for a period of time. So yeah, anytime we have that scenario, we utilize the past continuous, right? 2, to talk about an action that was in progress at a specific time or moment in the past. We were sleeping at 10 p.m. What were we doing at 10 p.m.? We were sleeping. So at that specific time, 10 p.m., this is what we were doing. Okay? So it was an action that was in progress. Once again, continuous. It was not a single isolated action, because if it were a single isolated action, then we would use the past simple. For example, we went to bed at 10 p.m. Now we use the past simple there because 10 p.m. represents a specific time, but it also represents a specific, a single isolated action. So at that very moment, this is what I did rather than what I was doing. You see? So in that case, we would utilize the past simple. We went to bed at 10 p.m. But if I want to describe what we were doing, right, and that action was continuous, we can utilize the past continuous. So we were sleeping at 10 p.m. If I wanted to ask a question that would require the use of the past simple, I would ask, what did we do at 10 p.m.? At 10 p.m., we went to bed. That's a single isolated action. Very good. At that time, I was studying French. Once again, we have a specific moment or time, and what was I doing? I was studying French. So when it comes to differentiating or distinguishing the past simple from the past continuous, it's going to come down to, once again, whether the action was in progress or whether it is just a single action that took place, that started and finished, right? It was started at a particular time and it finished at a particular time, right? But for actions that are ongoing, we utilize the past continuous. So that's basically the easiest way to distinguish these two tenses apart from each other, right? Right. So yes. 3. To talk about concurrent actions. And if you do not know what concurrent means, it means simultaneous or actions that are happening at the same time. That's what concurrent means. Actions that are happening at the same time. When we utilize the past continuous for this particular purpose, we're going to use words like while, right? Because while is going to tell us that there are going to be two actions that are happening at the same time, right? For example, my mother was cooking while my father was washing the car. These are two actions that were taking place at the same time. These are two actions that are also in progress. Or these were two actions that were in progress, right? And they were happening at the same time. So we utilize the past continuous, right? Of course, in the past, right? I was watching a movie while my wife was taking a shower. Once again, two actions that were happening at the same time. And it is worth noting that the actions do not have to be connected to each other. All right, 4. To talk about an action which was in progress before it was interrupted by another action. Now, this is important. We use the past continuous to talk about an action that was in progress before it was interrupted by another action. So when we mention the action that interrupted the action that was in progress, we utilize the past simple. For example, we were doing our homework when the storm started. Notice that the action that interrupts, with that action, we utilized the past simple because that was just an action that happened suddenly, right? But what was going on before that happened, right? So the action that was taking place before that, we have to utilize the past continuous because that was an action that was in progress. For example, I just use that. So let's use the second example. The children were playing a video game when the teacher entered the classroom. So what were the children doing before the teacher entered the classroom? They were playing a video game. So while they were playing their game, the teacher entered. So that the teacher entering the classroom interrupted an action that was ongoing, an action that was in progress. Right? Very good. 5. To make polite requests. So with this, we're going to utilize verbs such as wonder, think, and hope. We were hoping that you could give us the answer. We're hoping, yeah? So this is a way that we can make polite requests. We can use a past continuous to do that. And these are primarily going to be the verbs that we will use, right? I was wondering if you could assist me. I mean, we could just be direct and ask, can you assist me? But this is just one of those uses that this is just one of those uses that is special, right? So we were hoping that you could give us the answer. I was wondering if you could assist me. In essence, I'm requesting something, right? In this case, I'm requesting that you give me the answer, and in this case, I'm requesting that you help me, right? With whatever, right? 6. To describe the background details in a story. So when we want to set the scene in a story, we normally utilize the past continuous, right? So to give to give our audience or our readers the details that help to make the context more understandable, right? So when you give them those details that help them to understand the story, so you're going to see the past continuous being utilized a lot to describe the setting, right? For example, it was raining heavily last week. So this is an example of the setting. And I was waiting for Susan when I saw a bear. So again, these are details that help us to understand the story better. They provide background details. Of course, we can utilize the past simple in storytelling, but as you know, stories need to be built, and we need background information in order to understand why something happened. So this is why we utilize, or where we utilize, the past continuous, right? Good. And 7, to talk about irritating habits. And you will see adverbs of frequency being utilized here, like always, constantly. And this is the same as the present continuous, right? Where we said that it is used to talk about irritating habits. But of course, this is just in the past tense. So, she was always sleeping during classes. You were constantly failing English. So if we want to talk about an irritating habit, but in the past, we utilize the past continuous. right? An action that is constantly done, right? Very good. So these are the contexts in which we utilize the past continuous. Now, let me briefly say this, but we do not use the past continuous with stative verbs. And this is something that I would have mentioned in my present continuous video, right? Stative verbs are not actions, they refer to states of being, usually verbs that relate to perception and the senses are going to be stative verbs. Therefore, we would not say I was understanding, you would say I understood. Okay? With those verbs, we don't put them in the continuous. We only use the past simple, right? And the same thing occurs in the present tense, right? We don't put those verbs in the present continuous, but rather the present simple, right? Good. So these are the contexts. Now I'm going to show you how to negate sentences as well as how to form questions. Okay, so we move on to negation. How do we negate sentences in the past continuous? Well, we place not between the auxiliary verb to be and the continuous form of the main verb, otherwise known as the gerund. Okay, so we were not listening to music. As you see, not appears after the auxiliary verb, but it appears before the gerund. Okay? Same thing here. It appears after was, but before doing. If we wanted to produce the affirmative equivalence, we would say, we were listening to music. I was doing that. Right? Of course, we can form contractions by saying we weren't listening to music or I wasn't doing that. All right. Now, when it comes to questions, to form questions, the verb to be is put at the start and the continuous form of the main verb appears after the subject. So this is the formula. Was or were, of course, depending on the subject, and then the continuous form of the main verb. Therefore, were you studying? So the auxiliary verb goes at the start. We have the subject and then we have the continuous form. Was Paul breathing? I certainly would hope so. Right. So this is how you form an affirmative question. But what happens when we want to form a negative question? For negative questions, not is placed after the subject. So same formula, but we put not after the subject. Therefore, it appears between the subject and the continuous form of the verb. So, were you not studying? So I produce the negative of this. Likewise, was Paul not breathing? And I can form a contraction here by saying, weren't you studying? Notice that when it is negative, it is a bit different, right? Because the subject appears before the not, right? Or what am I saying? So remember when we did it here, it was we weren't listening, right? So they were and you're not just, they're already side by side. So you just fuse them. But here now, they were and you're not aren't next to each other. There's a subject in the middle, right? So that's just, I just wanted to point that out. Weren't you studying? And here, wasn't Paul breathing? Those would be contractions, all right? Now, when it comes to other interrogative words, we simply put those at the start. right? How, when, where, etc. For example, where were you going? Were you going? Where were you going? How was she doing? All right. So when it comes to using or forming questions with other interrogative words, we just put them at the start. Okay. So this concludes our lesson on the past continuous. I hope that it was not only useful, but it was also enjoyable. Thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you in the next one.